What's exciting for me every day is to wake up and see what's going on in the world of business and how they're engaged in this world that we're all talking about and trying to envision. And so much of what we talk about in business is first of all, it's not always the same thing. And so there's a chunk of it that's looking at these startups, these great clean economy companies that are being built from the ground up, many of them built by people in this room, Bill Green and Sunil Paul and Bob Hambrecht and others who have funded these companies. And these are very exciting. Some of them are well on their way. Others are just getting going. But there's another piece of this, which is everybody else, right? And what about all these guys? And how do they play? And what's the role that they play in all this? And what's really interesting is that if you look at these logos, every one of these companies right now is in the energy business in some way, shape, or form. They're either building components. DuPont makes 11 of the 12 components that go into a conventional polysilicon solar cell, everything except the silicon. The IT companies, the Intels and Microsofts and Ciscos and others are building the switches and routers and the software that optimize all this and help make the grid smart. Best Buy has aspirations to be the go-to place for the smart grid for the consumer. That's what they want to be when you go to wire your home and bring in the home solar kit or whatever it is and put it all together. So how do they play, and how do we get to engage? I'm not saying that any of these companies are green, let alone good, but there is an opportunity that we have to integrate into them. And some of these companies will go away. Some of these companies will be the NCRs, the Burroughs, the Wangs of this generation, the computer companies that were there at the beginning, the big guys who just don't exist anymore. But there's an interesting thing that's happening as we start to look at what's possible. And what's possible is how we put the pieces together. And I think that's part of what we're talking about here. And I think that one of the things that's happened so far is the failure for these companies to imagine what's going on. So we're starting to see this mashup of technologies that's just now beginning with energy technologies, information technology, building technology, and vehicle technologies that are starting to come together in ways that even the companies that are in this, those early stage companies as well as the big ones, are part of a revolution that most of them don't yet see. And so as these things start to become integrated and start to come together, we're going to see a whole range of transformational products and services that I believe are going to change the way we do a lot of things just as much as the internet has, while it improves efficiency and takes us to a whole new range of capabilities. So just to give a piece of that is this whole rethinking of what we know. And how do companies, what's the role for them to take these things? Cars give us freedom. That's one of the things that's become dogma in America. Most of us grew up on that. There's songs and culture and everything that has to do with that. And we believe that. I mean, most Americans, we may not in this room believe that, but most Americans do. And yet cars don't give us freedom. You gotta fix them and gas them and park them and insure them and drive them. And most cars these days are driven, 20% occupancy at a 10 or 15 mile an hour speed. And so they're sitting there. And so cars don't give us freedom. What gives us freedom is mobility, right? It's the ability to get from here to there. So what about the new technology? So what if one day you could say, all right, I want to go into town and I need my family, we're going to go in for the evening, a car makes itself available. I need to go to Home Depot and pick up some 2x4s, and a car makes itself available. I need to tool around the neighborhood, and a car makes itself available. I need to take my family up to Mount Lassen for a weekend, 6 kids, and we're going to make a car available. I want to take a ride in Highway 1 on a beautiful day, and a car makes itself available. An e-bike, you name it. That's freedom, that's the ability to have that access without owning any of those cars. And so we create these new kinds of better technologies. This is FlexCar on steroids. And so this is just one example of what happens when it all comes together. And so the message for business is that this has to not just be cleaner, not just has to be greener, it has to be better. Right? This has to be better technology. And Bill Green was talking about this. This has to be something that the market's ready to uptake. And so much of the technology has not been better. And better you can define in lots of different ways. I came up with a bunch of them here. It can be cheaper, faster, cleaner, easier to use, longer, higher performance, cooler, healthier for my family, whatever. We could form a group and probably in 20 minutes come up with 100 definitions of better. But the question is how does this become better? How does this technology bring us to a better place? Not just for individual consumers, the what's in it for me that someone was talking about earlier today, but better in terms of food security and housing security and energy security and easing congestion and safety in urban areas and, of course, jobs and health and, of course, global security. And so how does that become better? And so the question that I think is inherent in every company in all of this, and it's not just it's in the story that they tell. The story that they tell themselves and their employees and their stockholders, and the story they tell their customers, their suppliers, and the communities in which they operate, which is very simple. And it's the story that we're trying to tell here, which is very simply, what's the story we get to tell if we get things right? And if you think about it, we don't have that. We don't really know what that is. We have a really good story of what happens if we get things wrong. Thank you very much, Al Gore. Right? But we don't have that story about that happy path, about how we get to do all of these cool things with all of these great decarbonized technologies and have this newer, better way. So as business comes, we try to engage business, start up new ones and engage the bigger ones. We need to help them tell this story. They need to learn how to tell these stories about what happens if we get things right and what's the opportunity for the market, for the consumers, for society, for all of us as we get into this and do it in a better way. Thanks.